Hello. I don't have a background on this. All right. Can somebody please confirm that you're hearing me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Great. Somebody's using a chat. Once I open up the, I'm going to do that right now. Share the screen. I will not be able to see chat messages, so I do not use chat. Any questions about that? There's another feature. I think it's the emoticons and stuff like that. I don't use that either. For Zoom, they recommend that two teachers instruct a class in using Zoom so that one can do the chat and the emoticons and whatnot, and the other instructor does the lecturing. And you've only got one instructor, so I'm just not going to use the chat. If you want to send me a message, please email me. And I guess while I'm talking about that, are you guys seeing the screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
You're not seeing anything other than the Zoom thing. All right. Let me bring this to the top. Be careful where I grab it. Yeah. There we go. And I don't need that, so I'm going to close that. Let's come here. This is your Canvas microbiology site. So you'll first come log into Canvas and you'll be something like here. And then select the microbiology class. In which case you'll get this. Hopefully all of you have done this because you got the inbox to log into the class. A couple of things here. This class has some information. We're going to talk about the syllabus in just a minute, so I'll go ahead and open that. And I'm going to download that because it's much more user-friendly. Actually, I've got it on my computer, so I'll grab it there. Oops. So there's a link to the syllabus. There's a link to the first message, which hopefully you've already read. It's a little bit about the course. I should mention there are some announcements. First message to the class, you should read that. If you're interested in, I'm not sure how you say that, MESA, M-E-S-A, pantry and student grants, Excido for students. Excido is a group of, I think, science students. And then a link for what to do to get a good grade in this class. So those are some announcements you can do. Let me talk a little bit about resources of the week. Clark College has a resource of the week, and I'm not sure they've got the first one up there. You click on that link. Oh, you got to log into it now. Well, I'm not going to do that. Let me see if the spring term one still works. The spring term one, spring 2022, the links are pretty much the same, meaning they'll be covering the same material like the Penguin Pantry, counseling and health services, although the dates may differ. On tutoring services, they may tutor for different classes than spring term, but like I said, they're all about the same. And the spring term, I like the way they had it set up, that they had it set up spring 2022, and then they had a link for each week of the, what the heck is this called again? The college resource of the week. The later links do not, or they're not as well organized. So you may have to log in and then find where the college resource of the week is, log into it, and then scroll through it. So it's not going to be as neatly organized as spring term. So that's why I left that here. And I'm glad I did, because I didn't have to log into it spring 2022. Meaning in spring 2022, if you log into Canvas, you can get into the college resource of the week directly. And let me ask a question. Let's come back to our web page. Did anybody get into Zoom by logging into the Canvas page and clicking on the Zoom link? There it is there. Did anybody do that? Hello?
I did it that way and it worked just fine.
All right, that's what I wanted to know, because this is a new feature and I wasn't sure if it worked for students or not. It worked for me, although I did notice that when I go through Zoom this way, I don't have the background screen on when I started, but I'll get it on. Hopefully it's pretty easy to get the, it's just a picture of Clark College. About this course, it's going to be online, both the lecture and the lab over Zoom. So everything will be done online. If you do miss the Zoom meeting, it's not a problem. You just won't be able to directly ask questions, but you should be able to see the course. Let me make sure I'm doing that. Oh, there's the link there. So that red button means I am recording this. I am recording this and I will put it up on my YouTube website. There, click there and you'll get my YouTube website. You have to do it twice because Canvas cannot open a web page outside of Canvas directly. And so if you click this, we'll then open another window and it'll come to the YouTube website. And this would be a lecture that I recorded last term, this one right here. Okay. And all of these are earlier lectures. So I'll record them there. And generally, they will be up. The most recent one will be in this position here. Okay, so if you do miss the Zoom meeting, you can watch it later on YouTube. You just won't be able to answer questions. Now, there is a caveat, and that is if for some reason the meeting doesn't get recorded or there's a problem with Zoom and it doesn't record it, then there will not be a recording. But generally speaking, almost all of the recordings will be up for the meetings. Any question about any of that? Let me start closing down some of these windows. All right, let's go back to our class. So you should become familiar with the Canvas website. There's a link for what do you do if you need technical help or student help. Clark College has people who are employed to help you. And generally, you shouldn't have any trouble unless there's a problem with your computer and you're connecting to either Zoom, or maybe occasionally there will be a problem for students who have a problem getting the quiz, the multiple choice quiz, running on their system, in which case you should contact the technical help people. and I forget what they call that. I call it the student help desk, but it's the IT ticket request, and you probably want to talk to someone. So Tech Hub, that's what they call it. That's the library, though. No, the Tech Hub is the Canvas and other software issues. Modifying your Canvas site, a good reason for doing that is if I ever send out an emergency announcement or an emergency email, you'll get it if you modify your Canvas site. You can always check your Canvas email every day, in which case you would get the notification. A link to my YouTube site about Zoom. If you don't know about Zoom, you already are in the meeting, so you don't need to look on the invite, but that's what I emailed you, inviting you to the class. Some biosafety information for students and physicians. Because our lab will be all online, this is not terribly important this term, but if you ever were to take a microbiology lab in person, then this information will be useful to you. For our quizzes, the multiple choice questions, meaning the multiple choice quizzes, you do need to use Lockdown Browser, and this will explain to you the requirements of Lockdown Browser. Lockdown Browser is something you download on your computer. I believe it's software, and then it allows you to open the Lockdown Browser, to Respondus Lockdown Browser, and then take the quiz. You cannot take the quiz without that software. Any questions about any of that? Generally speaking, students don't have any trouble getting that up and running on their system, but every other term, I get one student who the Lockdown Browser does not work on their computer. If it doesn't work, you should call the Tech Hub or the other computer help and get help getting the Lockdown Browser running on your system. All of the examples that I've ran into, the students had something special about their computer, and the Lockdown Browser didn't work on their system unless they went in and changed the settings on their computer. So generally speaking, you just need to change the settings on your computer to get the Lockdown Browser requirement to work. So if you have trouble with the Lockdown Browser, then don't contact me, contact the computer help people, because they're experts on getting the Respondus Lockdown Browser up and running on your system. I would not be able to help you with that. You might let me know that you're having difficulty, and just to keep me informed. All right. And then if you don't have the textbook, there is a link to the first 3 chapters of our textbook, and then the summaries to all the chapters. So this is just a user-friendly thing, especially for when the bookstore is out of the textbook and what its students do. So I've got a link here for that. It does not have all of the chapters, and that's for copyright infringement requirements, meaning you do need to buy the textbook, but you can take other options than buying it from the bookstore. And we'll talk about that when we're talking about the textbook. All right, this week, by January 7th, you do need to take the plagiarism tutorial and the plagiarism quiz. The quiz will be worth 20 points. You must score 100% on this quiz, or else you'll get 0 on the lab project, what is it called? The infectious disease lab project, which is 100-point project. So you want to take this quiz. The nice thing about the quiz is you can take, I believe it's 7 tries on it. They're the same questions, although the questions will be randomized, but they're the same questions. But you do have 7 attempts. It must be taken by 11:59 p.m. Nope, excuse me, 8 p.m. on this Saturday, January 7th. All of the quizzes are finishing at 8 p.m., although all the other quizzes and the final are finishing at Wednesday at 8 p.m. This quiz, I should really make that a Wednesday, but this quiz it has to be taken by Saturday. If you take this quiz and the Plagy tutorial, then you'll learn how to do, close out. What do you call that? You'll learn about citations and then how to avoid plagiarizing material. Any question about any of that? This tutorial was set up by the Clark College Library.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So if we do not get a perfect score on the quiz, then we will get a 0 on the lab.
No, you'll get a 0 on the lab project. It's the infectious disease lab project, which is 100 points. However, you can take the quiz repeatedly up to 7 times.
Right, and we will get a 0 on that project if we don't get a perfect score on this quiz.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I've never had a student who didn't get a perfect score, but if you have trouble, like I said, just take it over again. It'll be the same questions, although the questions and the answers will be randomized, meaning they'll change position. And if you take the tutorial, you should learn the material for taking the quiz. All right. And then you scroll down further on this web page. It has the week 1 lecture. I have the overview and objectives for chapter 1, and I think that's chapter 10 as well. And then there's a link for the study guide to chapter 1. It's the same material we're covering in the Zoom lesson. However, this is in text format. It won't be in a PowerPoint format. Any question about any of that? Some of the lessons, I won't have the overview and objective broken off from the study guide, so it'll just be under one link, which I think I call it a study guide. Eventually I'll get all of them that way. Yeah, like chapter 3, I've only got one link and I call it a study guide. If you open the study guide, you'll have the objectives at the top of that study guide, and then the lesson notes be below that. A few other things. Most lessons have one worksheet, which is a 2.5 assignment for that week. The lecture worksheet is actually is it a discussion? It's a discussion. And so you'll be taking one question generally. Occasionally, you might have 2 questions. You can read the directions for the worksheet. You only need to answer one question. Answer the question that has not been answered. So the first person who opens it will get question 1. The naming and classifying of organisms was begun in the 18th century by so-and-so. So copy the question and then type in your answer. Oh, somebody's already done that. So give the question and the answer. And then the next person will take the second question. And the third student will take the third question. You do need to go in order, because if you do not go in order, it'll be very confusing what questions have been answered and what have not been answered. So please go in order. If you do not take the questions in order, you may get a penalty. Okay? And initially, I'll probably just give you a warning, and then after that, you will get a penalty. Because it really makes it confusing if you don't take the question in order. If you don't like the question, like the next one might be names are italicized or what, and the latter is used when it's difficult to italicize the name. We're talking about scientific names here. If you don't like that question, just skip it and let another student answer it, and then you can answer the question that's now available, which would be question 5 or a later question. Any question about any of that? Okay. So the questions do have to be taken in the order they come in, or otherwise it's just too confusing what questions have been answered and what have not been answered. There are some extra credit assignments. You can read about them, how to do them. The extra credit picture, just send me a picture of your face and I'll put it in my grade book. I've found that the best way for me to learn your names is to see your smiling face when I'm putting in the grades. So you'll get, I think it's 3 extra credit points just for that. If you don't have a digital photograph or you can't get one, just ask a student who has a phone to take a picture of you and then email it to yourself and then email it. Well, actually, you don't email it to me, you submit it in this file. Yeah, 3 points. And then there's an extra credit study sheet. This is asking you to get, tell me what your study schedule is. Download this link here. That's an Excel spreadsheet. On the first, what do you call it, worksheet, you put in your schedule. It's a little bit of an invasion of privacy, but you may generalize, such as listing things as family time or recreation. You don't need to say, I don't know, going to visit my significant other, something like that. You don't need to say something like that. Just say family time or recreation. But I do need a daily log. And then on the next spreadsheet will be your study schedule for week 1. If all of your weekly study schedules will be the same, that's all you need to do, and just put in the top of that all of the weeks will be following this study schedule. If, however, week 1 and week 2, you're going to have a different study schedule, put week 1 on the first, what do you call that, tab after the first spreadsheet, and then week 2 on the third tab. And then if you need to add more tabs, just add more tabs. I think it comes with 3 tabs. So you'll get 3 points for your schedule and then 3 points for your study schedule. And then when I look at your study schedule, I'll make sure that you're supposed to be studying when you actually have time to do it. So on your daily schedule, you'll have your the days you work, the days you're in class, the days you're in other classes, the days you're not the days, the time you're eating, time you're walking your dog, for example. You don't have to say specific things like that, but I will compare your daily schedule with your study schedule. And generally speaking, students get the points as long as they do it. But I may make a comment saying that I don't think you're planning on having enough studying for this class. I might say that if I feel you don't have enough hours set aside to study. All right, that is due January 7th at 11:59 p.m. Generally, most assignments will be due Saturday at 11:59 of that week. And that's true for the extra credit assignments as well. A worksheet, that's when it's due. And then the lab assignments, which we'll talk about that when we talk about the lab in our lab class. All right, any question about any of that? Any questions about the web page or what we're doing? If not, let's talk a little bit about the syllabus. Blow this up. So I've got the class here. If you need the numbers, they're there for the lecture and there for the lab. I might have that backwards. No, that's right. The lab is first because the grade will be recorded in the lab, but it's a course grade, so it doesn't really matter. The credits for the lab are 0 and the credits for the lecture are 5, which doesn't make any sense, but that's the way Clark College does it. And I think the reason why they're doing it this way is because they're tying the lab to the lecture. My email, although I prefer you to use the Canvas email, I will check the clark.edu email once or twice a week, but not more often than that, because I get a lot of junk email to the clark.edu email. If you email me at Canvas, if I don't check it every day, I will guarantee I will check it at least every other day. And generally Monday through Friday, I will be checking the Canvas email every day. On the weekends, probably the only time I'll check it every other day. So use the Canvas email, and how you do that is you just click the inbox right there. Actually, let's close that page. Didn't even know I had that open still. Where's my syllabus? If you need to talk to me and want office hours, the office hours are going to be online or by email or after the lab. Oftentimes students, if they're talking about something they don't mind other students in the class hearing, we can do it in the lab. Okay. But if you want it to be private, we could do it like after the lab ends. Just stay on and I'll let you know when all the other students have logged off, or we can make it an arrangement online. I do have an office, what do you call it, an office at Clark. However, I'm not going to be on campus this term, so it's not very useful. The textbook is going to be Microbiology and an Introduction by Tutora, Funk, and Case. You have a couple of options. You can buy it from the bookstore, in which case you should buy the 3rd custom edition, it contains only the chapters that we will cover. Earlier editions of the textbook are okay, although if you do get an earlier edition of the textbook, then you'll have to figure out what pages to read. Most of the time, it's not that difficult because I usually just assign an entire chapter to read, but you will have to find out what pages to read. You may also buy the full edition of the textbook, in which case, if you do buy the 12th edition, it's the green cover. The newest edition of the textbook is the 13th edition, and we're not using because we have the custom edition, which goes with the 12th edition. You can get these books by buying them online at various bookstores. You may also rent the ebook. And I guess that's all I'm going to say. There are some optional texts. They're kind of helpful, especially if you take the lab, the photographic atlas, the coloring book, you're taking the lab. They'll be helpful more in the lab and the lecture, although they are helpful in the lecture. And then the book, Get Ready for Microbiology. Now, some of these optional textbooks, if not all of them, you can pick them up at the library course reserve. Like there are 3 copies of the textbook at the course reserve, the photographic atlas, and the Get Ready for Microbiology. It is your responsibility to visit the Canvas website and become familiar with it. Course description, I'll let you read about that. And the student course outcomes, course policies and suggestions. If you're ill, you should contact me and I'll help you keeping track with the online course. You need to contact me prior to the due dates to make arrangements for late work if you are ill, but I will work with you if you do that. If you contact me after the assignment is due, you can submit it late. However, you will get a late penalty. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Preparation for class, you should get prepared for class by consulting the lecture and lab schedule, reading the material. The course will be very busy, so you should reread the material before we cover it, and certainly before the quizzes. Attendance and participation and cell phone use are not terribly important in an online class. You do need to attend the lab, but if you do miss it, you can view it on my YouTube website, and then you must submit the lab assignment by the due date. Any question about any of that? Now, there is one exception for attendance. There was a student who was trying to add the class. I need to ask, are you present? If you're not present.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, I am.
Now, just to make sure, you're a student, I said that if 2 students drop, I will add you, or are you a student who is trying to add the class and you just haven't added it yet?
I do have added and already gave me access for everything.
No, I'm asking about, did I give you the override codes? Or are you one of
Ye-
the students? Yes?
Yes, you provided me with an override code.
Okay. So you should be in the class. It's just that you're not in the Canvas list. Is that what you're telling me?
Actually, I am in it now. Yes, so we're all good.
Okay. All right. So the student who I promised that I would add him if 2 students drop, he's not attending the class, and so I will not be adding this person. That was the only attendance. The quizzes are all online. You do need to finish them by the assigned due date. If you're taking an online quiz, they must be taken in a 24-hour period. And if they are missed, they may not be made up. 2 days after the quiz, the due date of the quiz, the answers will be available. And I will guarantee you, I will not allow you to take the quiz after the answers show.
How many questions are usually on those quizzes?
It depends. Are we talking about the final or a quiz?
No, a quiz.
The quizzes will have between 15 and 20 questions usually. And I think that's the multiple choice quizzes. The essay quizzes will vary, but will be between 5 and I think the most will be something like 12. And they're not essay, they're short answer.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have multiple attempts on the quizzes or no?
No, there's only one attempt on a regular quiz. There is a, what do you call it, an extra credit quiz, and I forget what you call that. It's oh gosh, we're just going to call it an extra credit quiz. You get 2 attempts on the extra credit quiz. Okay. The extra credit quiz is just to try and get you familiar with taking online quizzes and quizzes by me. And I'll talk more about that later. But all the regular quizzes, you only take them once. And like I said, when you start, you have, well, actually what do you call it? The essay and fill in the blank questions, you have 24 hours to get it done. Assuming you were to start at 8 p.m. on Tuesday night, you have to get it submitted by 8 p.m. on Wednesday. With the multiple choice quizzes, you can take it within that 24 hours. However, the quizzes are, you have a time limit for each quiz. And once you start it, you have to submit it by the end of the time limit. And generally you have 1 minute per question, and then maybe like about 3 extra minutes for the entire quiz. So if it's 15 questions, the quiz will be, you've got to finish it by 18 minutes, something like that. Any question about any of that? All right, I'll let you read about wearing a mask. You should read about student responsibilities. You should know the assignment dates that are listed in the syllabus and Canvas. I will mention that labs have 2 due dates, and Canvas really isn't set up for that. So I will have the first due date will be the due date. And then the second due date will be the until date. Does that make sense? With the labs, you can submit it twice. The first time you submit it, I'll grade it, tell you what questions you got wrong. and then you have a week to resubmit the lab. So with the labs, I consider it an online, the online labs, I consider it a learning exercise. And the first time, if you don't get it, you'll get a second attempt. Now, the first time it's graded, you will get either 100% on that lab, or you'll get the code 0.01. That 0.01 is not your score. That's a code for me telling me to go in and look and see if there's a submission for a regrading that lab. And then the second time the lab will be graded, you will get your true score. And that'll be somewhere between 0 and whatever the lab is worth. It's either worth 2.5 points or 5 points. All other assignments, you don't get 2 submissions. Generally, you get 1 submission. All right, I'll let you read by that. Do follow the student code of conduct, especially as it applies to academic honesty issues. Cheating, plagiarism, and the like are not allowed in college. I don't care which college you go to. I've never heard of a college that allowed that. So if you plagiarize or you cheat, you will get a penalty for that assignment. Generally, you'll get 0% for that assignment. So don't cheat, do not plagiarize. Plagiarism is when you use 3 or more words from somebody else, and they're not your words. If you do want to use their words, you have to put it in quotes and then state where you got it from. That is legal. That's not plagiarizing. And with that stated, if ever an assignment has 50% or more of the assignment in quotes and then stated where you got it from, I just won't accept it. Okay, that's too much. You be reasonable. Okay. All right, all interactions, including student to student, student to instructor, and instructor to student, should be cordial, businesslike, and professional. This includes communications and emails. We all must be respectful, even if we strongly disagree with each other. And then some responsibilities for me. I will try to respond to all Canvas emails within 48 hours. If you send it to clark.edu, I'll try to respond within about half a week. So don't send it to clark.edu. I'll have all assignments graded within a week of the due date, but do understand the big assignments will take additional time. It takes me hours and hours to get a big assignment graded. So I probably won't get at least 2 of the big lab projects, meaning your unknown report and your infectious disease report, graded within a week. But all the other assignments will be. And then that applies to the first grading of the lab. I'll get it graded within the first week of when it is due. However, the second grading, I will get it graded whenever I have time, and it may be graded very late. Any questions about any of that? All right. Read about course withdrawal. If you need to withdraw from the class, do so. If you are thinking about dropping the class, you should do it within the first week. I don't remember if it's Friday or Saturday. If you do it in the first week, you'll get 100% refund. After the first week, you have to pay for the class. Late assignments, I do accept late assignments. Canvas will not, but you can email them to me if they are late. The penalty for a late assignment is 25% If it's sent within the first day late, thereafter, you get a 50% penalty on that assignment. I do not accept late assignments during finals week. I also don't accept extra credit during finals week or later. Already talked about plagiarism, so I won't talk about that. Clark College has made accommodations for religion or conscientious reasons. You can read about that. The catch there is you need to give me those accommodations within the first 2 weeks of the class. Etiquette for Zoom, you can read about that. Just be respectful. Another thing is when you're talking, you need to unmute yourself. And then when you're done, mute yourself so that we don't hear noise coming from your computer or whatever you're connecting to the Zoom meeting. Some suggested study methods. Microbiology is challenging because it's going to introduce many new vocabulary words, many new concepts. You're going to have several assignments due at the same time. You may feel stressed, especially in the middle of the term. This is normal, but many students say microbiology is one of their most enjoyable classes. To alleviate some of this stress, please set aside sufficient study time. Sufficient study time is an individual matter, but most students need approximately 7 hours per week outside of class. And that's including the 7 hours a week in class. So that's 14 hours of class per week, counting the time you spend in class. If external responsibilities prevent you from spending sufficient time in this class, it may be wise to consider taking this class during another quarter. I'll let you read about comprehension. Here's a list of suggestions that may help you study more efficiently. Use what works with you. Take on manageable chunks of material. Don't do it all at once. Do it in manageable chunks of time. Use concept mapping. Be organized. Use 10 to 15 minutes before class to skim both the previous class notes and those for the upcoming class. This will get your mind in the proper mindset for the class. Come to class. I know that sounds simple, but many instructors, including yours, have noted a strong correlation between attendance and grades. Obviously, the quizzes will cover material which is covered in the lesson. Listen in class. That sounds stupid, but many of us either tune out during the lectures or are so busy taking notes, we don't actually listen. You do need to take notes, and that's another thing. You should take notes when you're taking the class. But take sketchy notes and then go over them to fill in the details. You'll need to go over them within 24 hours because your short-term memory will only last for 24 hours. After that, you won't be able to fill in the material you missed or you didn't put in your notes. You should take notes because it's also been discovered that if you just listen to the material, you only learn about 10% of the material. If you take notes, you're listening, but then you're writing it down. And so that information is moving from one part of the brain to another. And you'll actually learn 20% of the material, which is still very low, but it's 10 times better, 2 times better than listening alone. So you should take notes. And how you get to learn the material is you need to go over your notes, go over the material, and then go over it again many times. Someone who's first played the material, like on a piano or some other musical instrument, you know that to learn it, it takes more than just one time. How many times does it take to learn the material? Anyone know? Anyone guess?
I'll guess 3 times.
Oh no, many more than that. They've done most of this study on middle school students. I'm not sure why, but they found that the students have to go over the material on average 20 times before they learn it. Now, when you're going over it, hopefully you are really invested in it, meaning you're really trying to learn the material. So you might be able to get it learned in significantly fewer times than 20, but I'll guarantee you it'll be something like 10 times. You have to go over the material something like 10 times before you learn it. So you should come to class. You'll get it 1 time by listening, 2 times if you actually take notes, and then go over your notes repeatedly, read the material, and then you will start learning the material. And that's how much effort it'll take to learn the material. Try active strategies like forming a study group, quizzing each other, writing mock questions. The best way to learn is actually to teach. And if you do form a study group, you can get extra credit point each, well, not each week, for 9 weeks. And I'll talk more about that in week 2. And then use visual techniques. All right, let's move on to grading. The plagiarism quiz will be 20 points. The quizzes, you're going to have 5 of them. And actually that most of the quizzes have like a quiz 1A and a quiz 1B. I'm counting that as one quiz. The quizzes are worth 75 points. However, you can drop the lowest quiz. So the quiz points will be 300 points total. The worksheets, there will be generally 1 for a lab for a total of 50 points. Each worksheet is due during the week of that lab, so Saturday, 11:59 p.m. The exception is the first lab. We'll talk about that in the lab. There's the lecture worksheets, and they're worth a total of 25 points. There's the unknown bacteria project, and that's worth 75 points. There's the infectious disease research project, and that's worth 100 points. And then there's the cumulative final exam, that's worth 150 points. On the final, most of the questions are multiple choice, fill in the blank, or only a few. So that makes a total of 720 points. So your grade will be out of that 720 points. There will be extra credit assignments worth 20 points. I've already mentioned you can send a picture, and then there's the extra credit study sheet. I think that's worth, together, both of those are worth 10 points. The grade will be your score out of 720. If you get greater than 92%, you'll get an A. If you get greater than 90%, you'll get an A minus. Greater than 88%, you'll get a B plus. Greater than 82%, a B, etc. Note that we don't have a C minus, a D plus, and a D minus. A note about that, Canvas does give you a grade. However, the grading curve is slightly different. And so if you see the letter grade in Canvas, it has a different scale. I think to get an A on the Canvas, you have to have over 93%, and we're not going to use that. So my point is the Canvas grade may not be correct. It'll be close, but it won't be quite correct. Any question about any of the grades? I'll let you read about question review and written corrections. Microscope use, we'll talk about that in the lab. You should look over support services for students. There are tutors available. Most terms have a microbiology tutor. I do not know if this term has a microbiology tutor or not. There are student success coaches. The Canal Library has a lot of resources you could use, campus computer resources, help with food, housing, financial challenges, safety and security. And then there's a link for enrollment deadlines. Generally speaking, we're going to be an online class, so there shouldn't be problems with what do you call it? People attending class. If Clark College is canceled, we could still meet because we're going to be online. I'm not sure if an online class would be canceled or not. I'll have to look into that if Clark College is canceled. You know, I've been teaching this online class for long enough. You'd think I would know that, but I actually don't. I'll let you read about the non-discrimination policy, school emergency procedures. I'll let you read about that because we're going to be online. Safety information for students and physicians. Clark College does have a COVID-19 policy. However, the COVID-19 policy lately has been changing each term. So I don't even know what it is this term because I'm not planning on being on campus. But I believe the policy is that masks are recommended but not required if you are on campus. And I don't know about the other screening, health screening. The other information is useful if you were going to be exposed to the bacteria in the lab. However, everything we do in the lab will be online, so you will not be exposed to bacteria. Some words of advice and comfort. Sometimes it seems like your instructors are your enemies. It is true we must maintain standards, so we cannot always accommodate you. However, you should know that we all want you to succeed, and that one of the joys of teaching is interacting with my students. Getting to know you and helping you achieve your academic goals also is a joy for me. So if you have any problems, complaints, or concerns, come and discuss it with me. If you don't want to discuss it, email me. The earlier, the better. Don't let them fester because they only generally get worse. And hopefully you'll have some fun in this class. We'll talk about the lab safety rules when we talk about the lab. And then at the end of the syllabus, it has the schedule. Come on. Tentative schedule, winter 2023. I've talked about the technology session, I talked about the syllabus, a little bit of tips for success, not so much about vocabulary. And then we need to talk about chapter 1, the microbial world in you. While we're talking about chapter 1, we're going to talk a little bit about chapter 10 and the textbook pages 264 to 272. Any question about that? On the left, it tells you the week, January 3rd to January 7th, week 1, the lecture topics and the exams. The exams will be highlighted in yellow, like Wednesday, practice quiz 00. That's not right. Oh, sorry, that's practice quiz. That's what it's called. Practice quiz is the extra credit quiz that is due on Wednesday. The online quiz, though, is due this Saturday by 8 p.m. Saturday, January 7th. So get your online plagiarism quiz done. And then on the right, there's the laboratory schedule. Any questions about the schedule? On the schedule, I have the quizzes and the assignments. However, the assignments to the lectures and the labs are generally weekly for each lesson. And they're due Saturday at 11:59 p.m. They're not shown on this syllabus. The exception would be if they're not due on Saturday, 11:59 p.m. But I think on this one, all of them are, even chapter 7. All right, any question about the schedule or the syllabus? If not, let's go on and start the first lesson. Let me think now, where do I have the lessons? I think they're here. Chapter 1 and chapter 10. Chapter 1 is chapter 10 is all the chapter. Chapter 1 is all the chapter. Chapter 10 is page 272 to 281 for the current edition of the custom textbook. The earlier edition of the custom textbook would be that pages. Usually I have a slide for each lesson giving you the major goals and the rough outline. So know the terms: what's a microbe, what's a microorganism, what's a germ, what's a pathogenic organism, parasitic organism, microbiota, an infectious disease, an emerging infectious disease, what's pasteurization, and what's Koch's postulates. These are some of the terms you need to know, the major goals. Realize this is not the entire objectives you do need to learn for chapter 1. If you want to see all of the objectives, come to this link here, and it'll show you the entire objectives for chapter 1. The objectives are important, so hopefully you'll use them for studying, because all of the quiz questions will come from an objective. Like in chapter 1, explain what is a microbe or a microorganism. Any questions about any of that? We'll then talk about the brief history of microbiology and the importance of microbes. So let's start talking about the importance of microbes. Here we're looking at the nitrogen cycle. You can say nitrogen starts in the atmosphere. Actually, this is a cycle, could start anywhere. The nitrogen in the atmosphere can be fixed by bacteria and archaea into an organic chemical compound. with an amino group. And most of that will decompose by bacteria, archaea, and fungi, and then will be released as ammonia or ammonium in the soil, or I guess in the ocean. And plants and algae can use ammonia or ammonium. They can, but they don't like it. The ammonia and the ammonium can be changed by bacteria and archaea into a nitrite, NO2 with a negative charge, or can be converted by bacteria into a nitrate, NO3 negative. And this is the form of nitrogen that green plants and algae love. So if you look at any plant fertilizer, it'll have nitrates in it. And then when these plants and algae decompose, most of it will go into ammonia, but they could be eaten by an animal, for example, as an organic chemical compound. And then most of that, when the animal dies, will be converted into ammonia or ammonium. Some of it is converted into nitrate. Now, nitrates can be converted by bacteria and archaea into nitrogen in the atmosphere, creating the nitrogen cycle, and then it starts all over again. If we look at the nitrogen cycle, wherever there's a red arrow, this part of the nitrogen cycle is happening because of microbes. So microbes are happening here in the nitrogen cycle, here, 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 and here, meaning most of the steps in the nitrogen cycle are happening because of microorganisms. Any question about any of that? So microbes are extremely important in the nitrogen cycle, and we need the nitrogen cycle. Otherwise, nitrogen will accumulate in one place, like if it would, I don't know, either just decay, and then you have this nitrogen in a dead tree on the ground, and it doesn't ever break down. Or if the microorganism broke that down into ammonia, it would just stop there, and then all the nitrogen would accumulate in that one spot. So you need the nitrogen cycle for life to continue on the planet. So the nitrogen cycle is essential for life, and it's only happening because of microbes. Any question about that? Meaning microbes are crucial to the functioning of the nitrogen cycle and to life on Earth. When we're talking about rocks and the making of soil, you probably don't know this, but actually microbes can help break down rocks, leading to the formation of soil. So that microbes are important in the formation of soil. Now, with that stated, let me state that the majority of soil does not come from the breakdown of rocks by microbes. It comes from the breakdown of rocks by erosion. The wind and the water erode the rock, making soil. But some of the soil is created by microbes, meaning there are microbes which actually degrade rocks, getting the nutrients out of the rocks, and then using those nutrients and making the soil. So microbes are important for formation of soil. Microbes are also important in the production of oxygen on the planet. Initially, on the planet Earth, there was 0% oxygen in the atmosphere, and that occurred for the first 2 billion years of Earth's history. And then between 2.7 and 1.8 billion years ago, oxygen started accumulating in the atmosphere. Why that happened was because of microbes. Microbes that were photosynthetic started generating oxygen as a byproduct, and that was by cyanobacteria. And then that oxygen was being released and then going into the air. And so oxygen started accumulating in the air. Now, once that happened, there was some oxygen in the air that prevented radiation from getting through the atmosphere, which then allowed plants to evolve on land. And then they gave rise to more oxygen, bringing our oxygen level to present day, which is 20 to 21%. And of that oxygen we have there today, 20 to 21%, half of that oxygen comes from microorganisms. The other half comes from green plants and the other non-microbe photosynthetic organisms, which are essentially all green plants. Any question about any of that? The point being is microorganisms are extremely important in the formation of oxygen on the planet Earth. Here we're looking at a sewage treatment plant. Humans make the waste by flushing your toilets and washing stuff down your sink, and then humans break down the waste in a facility like this, right? Anyone disagree? Humans are breaking down this waste? No one's going to comment? Humans don't break down the waste. We build the facility in the wastewater treatment plant, but it's actually microorganisms which are in the water breaking down the waste. And then that's important for life on Earth because that recycles what we flush down our toilets and our water, making it available for life on the planet, meaning you convert the carbon in your waste, like let's say you grind up the celery stem, flush it down your sink, and it'll be degraded, the carbon in the celery, by microorganisms, releasing that into CO2 and water, which life can then reuse. All right, any question about any of that? Those three examples how microorganisms are extremely important to the functioning of the planet, allowing life to continue on the planet. The nitrogen cycle, the recycling of nutrients like the wastewater plant, and then the formation of oxygen on the planet Earth. So let's talk a little bit about microorganisms. A microorganism is a microbe, and generally we'll use these two words interchangeably. A microbe is a microorganism, and when we use the term microbe, we mean all microbes, including those which are not an organism. Excuse me here, I need to blow my nose. So organisms which are too small to be seen by the unaided eye is a microbe or a microorganism. And these include the bacteria, the archaea, the yeast, the molds, the protozoans, some algae, if they're microscopic, if they're single-celled algae, they're microbes. However, the kelp that washes up on the Oregon and Washington beaches, that would not be a microbe or a microorganism. And that is an algae. So only the microscopic algae is a microorganism. And then we do include viruses and prions as a microbe. And these are special because these are not organisms. They don't have cells. Sometimes they are called microorganisms, and that's okay. Just realize that a virus and a prion are not organisms. They do not have cells. Any question about any of that? All right. Microbes and microorganisms are almost everywhere, so we generally talk about them as the ubiquity of microorganisms. As I've already shown you, they play beneficial roles in numerous processes on both you and the planet Earth. And numerically, they're the most abundant life form on the planet Earth. If we look at them, they are small. I need to talk about what is a cell. I've mentioned briefly that bacteria, archaea, yeast, molds, and protozoans, and then the small microscopic algae have cells. So what is a cell? The cell is the basic structural and functional unit of an organism. A cell is a highly organized compartment bounded by a thin, flexible structure that we call the plasma membrane. All cells contain three components: the plasma membrane, the cytoplasm inside the cell, and then DNA, the genome of the cell. Any question about that? If we look at the pictures here, where would you not find a microorganism in every inch of the picture? Like, do you not find it in the water, not in the rocks, not in the plant life, not in the ocean water, not in the air above the water? Anyone? How about in the soil, in the plants above the soil, or in the air above the plants? How about on this kitten? Are there microbes on the cat or on the person? How about the door? Is anyone going to take a guess? Where would you not find microbes?
I think microbes don't show up in really high heated areas, right? Like volcanoes or
Yeah,
high heat sources, but everywhere else they're basically there.
everywhere else you're going to find them. You'll find them in the desert. You find them in the desert air. You find them in the ocean. You'll find them in the soil. And then they're loaded on the cat skin and the person skin too. You'd find them everywhere except right there, which let's blow that up a little. That's red for magma or lava. That'd be too hot for a microorganism to survive. But you would find it on the rocks surrounding the magma, or on, I guess that's the snow there. So you would find microorganisms everywhere except where the lava is. Now, with that stated, you do find microorganisms in the air, microscopic spores, up about a mile into the air. And then in the soil, you can find microorganisms down about a mile into the soil. And that's true also for the ocean floor. You can find microorganisms down about a mile underneath the top of the ocean floor. That may not be if you don't have soil and you have solid rock. You might find you might not find microorganisms in the solid rock. They'd be on the top of the solid rock, but they may not be in the solid rock. Any question about any of that? All right, if there's no questions, I think I'm going to end the lesson here. So I'll see you in the lab at 6:30 unless there's questions. All right, if there's no questions, I'm going to say goodbye and I'll see you at 6:30 in the lab.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
I had a quick question. To log into the lab, it's the same as this one, right?
No, there should be a separate link for the lab.
I'll look for it. Thank you.
Okay.